Hi, this is Madone from Strike Post Your Set. Welcome back for the rest of the briefing on the CAS sequence. Again, so we've seen step 1 to 3. We stopped at situation update. So after that situation update, you probably did some sensor tasking, or you found a target, or you are in contact, something happened, and you want to destroy something with CAS. So how you do that? Well, you do that with a game plan, and we'll move all the way to the CAS brief and remarks restrictions, as well as the readback during that briefing. So talking about the game plan, it's a very important part to make the pilot understand your general idea. Especially if you have third parties, you want to make a general game plan first with the call signs, the frequency, the roles, and then move to individual game plans. As I said in the basic theory lesson, in the game plan there are two mandatory things, which are the type of control and method of attack. And then you can add up anything you want, but if you don't add anything behind that, you will have to give it in the remarks. So if you do ordnance, it's a good practice to give it in the game plan so they can plan ahead for the weapon system they're gonna use. But it's also not bad to do it in the remarks or at the end of your restrictions if you want to imply it as a restriction, because it will stay fresh in the pilot's mind. But my own personal method is to give it in the game plan all the time, because that's my habit and that's how I work. You can also request the fuzing, the effect on target, and then the intervals. I usually give the intervals at pilot's discretion, at the leader's discretion, because he knows what he wants to do with his wingman, unless I have very specific requests. So I will usually give a shooter with interval at pilot's discretion. It will come up with a seconds, and I will agree or not, but usually I will agree because it's his flight and I want him to fly the way he wants to. So CAS brief, which is step 5. And for me, game plan, CAS brief, remarks and instructions are all on the same page when I work, because that's how I like it. You can make separate pages if you want to. So remember to label your targets. That's why it's the first thing in the header here, because it's easier than to work with previous targets if you need to. Remember, even if a 9-line is not for you, write it down. It's important, and it comes handy with the labels. So the first thing we're gonna look at is quickly the game plan window here, because I know it's the previous slide, but still it's more visual here. You see I can request, usually I write down my ordnance here in the blank space, 1 by GBU12 for example, and then I select the fuse I want. If I want instantaneous, 10 milliseconds delay, airburst, which is AB. So airburst is proximity, it will explode above the ground. It's very good for infantry, which is dug in. And then procedure, if we perform enhanced target description, which will be part of another video, ground lasing, which will also make another video, and IR. Now the special things are the high angle of impact, so you can request more than 70 degrees impact angle for lowering your collateral damage, if you want precise effect, on buildings, stuff like that. And then shooter, as I said, with the interval that I usually give to the pilot, as I mentioned. And then you say advise ready for 9-line. That's when the pilot answers ready to copy 9-line, and you move on the CAS brief, which is the part here that I'm gonna focus on. So line 1, 2, 3, it can be, when it's simple, it can be from the overhead. If the plane is over the battlefield already, you don't need to specify an IP. Just say from the overhead or non-applicable, or if you use a keyhole template, you can mention the keyhole, and keyhole will be part of another video as well. So that's the easy part. You say 1, 2, 3 from the overhead, so that ticks all those 3 lines. Easy for you. So line 1, 2, 3. If you use an IP, you want to start with the IP name here. So IP, let's say we have IP Dodge. We will say IP Dodge, and that goes for all the CAS brief. You don't mention the numbers on the headers here. You just say the word that is here, the heading, distance, elevation description, you just want to make it short, you know. So you give the IP name. It's simple so far. And once you have selected your IP, you have to obviously figure out a heading to the target from that IP that you will give here in degrees magnetic. Also, you can give the distance, you have to give, sorry, the distance in nautical miles for fixed wings, and it will be in meters for rotary wings. Also for rotary wings, at the first line, it will be the BP, which means battle position. Battle position is just an area that you gave to the helicopter to proceed for his firing positions. He will be holding in a holding area prior that, which is further behind you to keep him safe. And then when he has to engage a target, he will proceed for the battle position within which he will select some firing positions. You don't want to be too restrictive, give them a big area so they can select their own firing position. And you will name that, so you will make that up. Battle position alpha, you want to mention that here. Give the heading of the center, from the center of the battle position to the target, and then distance in meters. So that's for rotary ring. Now something special here, it's in offset, left, right. So I'll show you on paint how it looks like. So here, let's say we have this active gun to target line. So the red cross here are targets, obviously. And we have IP Chevy with a heading of 090 degrees. And here you can see offset left, offset right. You probably understand that when you are the aircraft coming from that direction, and sorry for the bad look of the arrow, you understand that we are going to run through that IP, you will call IP inbound or leaving IP, and you will be on your heading. But now, if the JTAG requests an offset, that means you will be standing on one side or another of that IP. In here, if you request offset to the right, that means you will use a heading which is, let's say, in between 090 and here it could be, let's say, 045 degrees. So the final attack heading will obviously have to match that cone. You cannot give an offset right and then expect the pilot to have a final attack heading attacking from the northwest here. So that would be a good way to keeping south of that line from the IP to the target and avoid that active gun to target line. So that's a lateral deconfliction that is possible to do with offsets. That's useful. Now we are moving on to the elevation. So the elevation is mandatory. You have to give it in feet from mean sea level. So you see the green boxes are all the mandatories. The line 8, we'll talk about it. It's depending if you are US or NATO, it will not be a mandatory readback, but that's something for later and step 7. Moving on, line 5, which is description, it has to be short and concise. Example 1 by T72 static in open. If you have movement, give a general direction. If you have a speed, that's good as well. You can give, as I said, the protection. And another important thing is if you have precision guided munitions, you can give a DPI. Example, center of the building or northeast corner of the building. The DMPI will be for the unguided ordnance. That means desired mean point of impact, because unguided ordnance don't have a point of impact that is precise enough to, so it's just meant to go there. And line 6, location. So the standard format for grids are MGRS. Now some people in DCS like to work with lat longs because it's not always implemented correctly for the MGRS. For example, the Mirage will be only in lat longs, but it will be degrees, minutes, decimal, not with seconds. It's just a bit more annoying to work with. For the JTAC, he has to switch in between the different grids. In DCS, you just have to press Alt left plus Y, and it will change the coordinates for you in the bino. To make things even easier, you can also use a known point here, and that's something I really like to do. Example, You have GRGs, which are gridded reference geographic. So they will show you a grid over a urban area, so you can pick up houses by numbers in areas, and the pilot will correlate with that on his own book, GRG book or GRG picture. Let's say, for example, you have Alpha Eco as an area and you select building number 12. You can mention that in the location here and you will gain a lot of time because no grids read back. So you say location Alpha Eco building 12. Use something that is persistent. If you label something, because you can label things and mention it in the target location if you are correlated because you did sensor tasking. So don't use smokes, fires that can be extinguished, just something that is not gonna move anytime soon. It can be a precise location like an echo point. If you gave one for your keyhole, you can re-mention that in the location here to gain time if it's your target. Another important point is when you are given 6 digits, you need to add 2 zeros on each line to fill in the blanks for your system that requires 8 or more digits. As you can see on this video, I added zeros to the decimals of the lat longs. Line 7, which is a mark type and terminal guidance. Here you have to make a choice if you use a mark or a designation. If you use laser to designate the target on a laser code, you will say designated by laser or designated by ground laser, which is even more precise. And if you use a smoke or any kind of other mark for your target, you will say marked by white smoke, or let's say direct fire, IR, anything that can mark your target. Here the operator call sign laser code is obviously for ground laser. You want to mention what is the call sign of the laser operator and what will be the code in use. So if you do any mistakes in the code, the pilot will have to spot it here, and so that's why you have to pay attention to that line when you do ground laser. Line 8, which is friendlies. You want to give a cardinal direction and distance in meters of the closest friendly position. And the last one is egress, which is the line number 9. That's where you mention what you want the pilot to do after his attack. Does he have to prepare for a re-attack? So you will give him an egress to the south or to the north. Any cardinal direction will do. If he has to do a hard break, a hard turn, max performance turn, you can mention that here. If he has to climb, if he has to go back to another directive on your keyhole template, for example, he came back from Alpha 8, you want him to proceed for another direction. For example, let's say you want him to remain Eco 5, you can specify here egress remain Eco 5. But that can also be given in the airspace coordination area that we'll see in the restrictions. There's a little tip I want to give you here as well for JTACs and aircrews. If you need time to feel the 9 line under enemy fire and you have pressure and you don't really know what to do, what weapon to employ, you need time to think, well, request a show force to gain time and try scare the target, which will maybe not work in DCS because if it's the AI, they don't give a crap about your show force, but do that only if no ADA is present. And just, I didn't mention that small text here, but yeah, it's just about the location. It can be an offset as well, I forgot to mention that. So let's say there is that building number 12 from Alpha Eco, and there's another building which is your target, which is next to it but doesn't exist on your GRG. You can give the offset from the known building. So building number 12, you will say building number 12 Alpha Eco 100 meters north, and that's it. The pilot will look 100 meters north and he will find your target most likely. So now moving on the remarks and restrictions, which is quite long to explain as well. We start with the laser to target line, pointer to target line, which is in degrees magnetic. So make sure to include that when you do ground laser or IR correlation. It's gonna help the pilot know which end is gonna be the target of your laser beam. Or for the LTL, for example, it will help the pilot double check your laser cone if you do ground laser. if you do body lasing, there are no laser to target line. I know that's a question that comes up sometimes. Body lasing, safe lasing, no laser to target line exists. It's only for ground lasing purposes. The TLE is the target location error. It goes from 1 to 6. It depends the accuracy of your system used to extract the grids. Usually most targeting pods now are TLE 3 and below, which means less than around 15 meters. And then above that, you can still use GPS bombs, but you need to be careful. You have also different means of using precision guided munition. If you have bad TLE, for example, you can use BOC with ground lasing on final, which will restore the accuracy of your laser guided bomb. So usually in DCS the binos are pretty accurate, so you can always work with precision guided munitions here. It's no factor, it's more for real life stuff. Now our ECD, I will just pass on that because it's for real life. If you have any question about it, you can ask them. Maybe I will be able to answer them, maybe not, but you can try. Now, hazards. Wind, it can be useful to give that for a type 3 control because the pilot will use the wind direction and speed. He will know if he has to attack a certain target prior or another. Hazards are more if the situation has evolved and you moved from where you were for your setup and you didn't do any new setup. You want to mention the new hazards here, but usually they will be mentioned in your situation update if you didn't move. Active gun to target line, degrees magnetic, it's just another resay of what's in the setup. You want to mention it here if it evolved, and you have more precise elements for fire mission. And that fire mission has to be in the vicinity of your strike. If it's 40 kilometers away and the gun to target line doesn't imply the confliction for you, it doesn't matter for you, the target is not even in your vicinity, you don't care about it. If it's another unit using it, you don't care about it, don't mention it here. However, it's good for the JTAC to know that, so he will know that you cannot push the aircraft 20 nautical miles to that side because you have other units working there. Then surface to air threats, if they were not mentioned in the setup as well, and then additional info which is not very important. So now on the restrictions, remember that you don't want to over restrict an aircraft if you don't have to. And final headings especially, they need to make sense, and you can go as low as plus minus 5 degrees on the final heading, but please don't go lower than that, otherwise the pilot will have to really focus on that. So use a cone of plus minus 10 degrees minimum. That will make things easier for you. A final technique can be as simple as giving a geographic feature to line up the aircraft. Example that's in the tip here that I'm reading, parallel to the road, and as you can see on that video, it's a lot easier to line up on the road because it's visual. You can visually see what's gonna be your heading when you are inbound. It's a lot easier to assess your turn rate and your speed and line up with that than looking at your HSI. So when you can use features like rivers or anything linear, use that. And then if you have to, you can use cones with a counterclockwise, for example, final tightening between 260 and 280 degrees magnetic, and clockwise that means it will be 270 plus minus 10. And you can also use counterclockwise if you do type 3 control and you want to exclude a sector. Moving on, the danger clause, that's required when the friendly troops are within the risk estimate distances of the weapon you're gonna use, and you need the approval of your Grand Commander giving his initials. So usually in DCS that would be the initials of the JTAC because we don't have Grand Commanders again. Next one is the airspace coordination area. So that's where you want to mention if you want to restrict the aircraft in a particular box in the sky. If you want to keep your aircraft west of that grid line 9 or 0, let's say. And then it's all the timing restrictions if you want to give time to target, which will be hacked. The JTAC will say ready, 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 hack. That's when he starts his timer. And the aircrew, if they done the timer hack, they will say good hack. If they didn't, they have to mention it to the JTAC and he will start over again. Or then you have the time on target, which is on the GPS time, and it's the time at which the bombs are to impact the target. If you are the guy requesting the time on target, remember that you need to give that maybe after the correlation, because if you give a time on target and you haven't done the correlation and for some reason it takes more time than you guessed, then you're gonna be fucked and you will have to change it. And if you have multiple parties involved, it would be a mess. So do the correlation before you give the time on target. And also ask the pilot for his quickest time on target. And sometimes pilots will shoot themselves in the foot and give you something that is too short for them and they will not make it. So always take that small margin of error, for them. So you don't want to rush things. It will get messy. Just take the time to do it properly. Give yourself a little margin there. Then you can say when ready or immediate and use that only when needed. Usually I don't say anything if I just don't need time on target or time to target, I just don't say anything here. Immediate is really when there's a sense of urgency, when you're already like pinned down, you need that strike right now, you could say immediate. And then other, because it's like additional info in remarks, it's like that blank line just in case. And now the last step of this video will be readback, the step 7. So you've done your game plan, CAS brief, remarks, restrictions. It's now time to do the readback with the aircrew, and only the leader will do the readback for bomb on target. But all the aircraft will have to do a readback of the mandatories if you do bomb on coordinates. So this is, as it says, self-explanatory. I will not spend too much time on that. Line 4, 6, 8 and all restrictions. Again, US differs on that, and the line 8 will not be asked, but if it's NATO, you have to read it back. And that's pretty much it for that briefing. So thank you for watching again, and see you in the next video.